Imagine a time before gaming websites, before review scores, before even the word gamer existed. If you wanted to read about video games in the late 1970s, you'd find them squeezed between ads for VCRs and hi-fi systems, treated more like accessories than entertainment. But a small group of writers saw something different. They saw creativity, artistry, and design hiding beneath the pixels and paddles. They believed that if games could make us think, laugh, and compete, then they deserved the same kind of thoughtful discussion as books, movies, or music. In 1979, three friends, Arnie Katz, Bill Kunkel, and Joyce Worley, convinced a consumer electronics magazine to give them a single column. They called it Arcade Alley, and with that, they gave video games their first serious voice. 2 years later, that voice grew louder with Electronic Games, the first magazine dedicated entirely to gaming. It would invent the language of an entire industry and prove that playing wasn't just a pastime, it was a culture. Today, we're tracing that story, from a modest magazine column buried in the pages of video to the publication that defined how we write, think, and talk about games. Join us as we explore how three writers turned their passion for play into the foundation of video game journalism on today's trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello and welcome to the 270th episode of our video game history podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week we'll tell you a story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game or the people who have created it. It can be about a console or the technology that brought it to life. We often talk about the companies that bring it all together, making our hobby, video games, a reality. While telling you each story, we hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. Today, we are flipping through the pages of Electronic Games Magazine, the first dedicated video game publication in the United States that launched in 1981. As a pioneer in gaming journalism, it offered reviews, strategies, and a glimpse into the new world of video games, shaping how the industry was perceived by players and developers alike. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, who'd probably pitch me an article about the best ways to rage quit a game. He's my brother, Rob Casson. Rob, if you did finally write that article, do you think it'd be more of a strategy guide or just one long rant?
Well, if you pay attention to the rant, you realize that it really is strategy.
The rant is strategy.
Yeah, sometimes you mix it in there. It's a rant, but it's deep down. If you actually read between the lines, there's your strategy.
And rounding out our panel today is our returning guest, who's been trying to pitch me an article titled Why I Keep Dying on Level 1 for 20 years now. Eric Ball. Eric, if you were writing that article, do you think you'd focus on lack of player skill, bad design, or just pure bad luck?
Well, we participated in that with the Halo game for 20 hours straight.
We did.
In one level.
We did.
I would say skill.
Yeah, lack of skill.
And,
definitely lack of skill.
Bad luck and skill. And yeah, we just suck.
Yeah, we suck. Yeah, definitely lack of player skill. Most definitely that article would be about our lack of player skill. I'm not going to pretend I'm great at video games. I just enjoy them and enjoy learning about them. That's about where it ends there. So,
but we finally got through.
We did. We've gotten through all the Halos. So, did we finish 5? I don't know if we finished 5.
We finished 5. We haven't done Infinite because we're waiting for co-op.
That's yeah.
And then it just
was what it was.
But we can do that soon.
We should do that soon. Well, we are covering Electronic Games Magazine today. In a lot of ways, we're covering the beginning of video game journalism. There was definitely a little bit of, they were writing on it in newspapers and talking about it on television before this publication. But this publication was really the first dedicated magazine or anything to video games, and really kind of the launch pad for video game journalism. So we got a whole story about it. But before we get into the magazine's legacy, Rob, why don't you share with our listeners what else happened during this week in gaming history?
All right, well, kicking it off on October 29th, 1998, Fallout 2 was released for Microsoft Windows, developed by Black Isle Studios and published by Interplay Entertainment. Building on the foundation of the original Fallout, this sequel expanded the post-apocalyptic wasteland with a larger map, deeper role-playing mechanics, and a branching narrative filled with moral ambiguity. Set 80 years after the first game, players take on the role of the Chosen One, a descendant of the Vault Dweller, tasked with finding the fabled Garden of Eden creation kit to save their struggling village. Fallout 2 earned acclaim for its dark humor, political satire, and the unmatched freedom it offered players to shape their destiny through choice and consequence. Despite early technical hiccups, it went on to become one of the defining RPGs of its era, cementing Fallout as a cornerstone of the genre and an enduring influence on open world storytelling.
I'm a Fallout fan. I thought they were great. Of course, I've talked about Fallout 3 being a defining gaming moment for me. So that'll always be my favorite. But play the first two for funsies.
Yeah, go play the games and see if you like them. You might not. You might hate them.
Yeah, they're that isometric view and that style definitely not for everybody.
And sometimes Fallout isn't either.
Well played. Okay, move on.
Next up, on October 29th, 2001, Motor City Online was released for Microsoft Windows, developed and published by Electronic Arts. This ambitious online racing game invited players into a persistent world of vintage car culture, where they could race, customize, and trade classic vehicles from the 1930s through the 1970s. Featuring deep tuning options, competitive leagues, and a player-driven economy, Motor City Online aimed to blend the thrill of racing with the community-driven spirit of MMOs. However, despite its innovative ideas, the game struggled to build and retain a large audience, leading to its shutdown in 2003. Though short-lived, it stands as an important milestone in the evolution of online racing and automotive customization. One that we actually explored back in episode 61, where we trace the broader history of racing MMOs. So if you want to learn more, go give that episode a listen.
Have we played any racing MMOs? I don't think we have.
No. Nope.
No. Sad. We should. I don't know what's out there these days. Maybe I should listen to my own episode.
Yeah, maybe you should, and you'll find out. But for now, the only MMO I'm involved in is
Run Escape.
Yeah, Run Escape. Go check that out too.
Run Escape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, you were gonna say, speaking of what?
I was gonna say, speaking of games that I have played.
Yes, and you mentioned earlier games that are defining for you. One for myself, on October 26, 2004, Rockstar Games released Grand Theft Auto San Andreas for the PlayStation 2, marking the 7th main entry in the Grand Theft Auto series. Set across the fictional state of San Andreas, loosely inspired by California and Nevada, the game follows Carl C.J. Johnson as he returns home to Los Santos after his mother's death, only to become entangled in corruption, gang conflict, and personal redemption. San Andreas redefined open-world design with its massive interconnected cities, deep customization systems, and groundbreaking mechanics like swimming, flying, and managing gang territories. Its mix of storytelling, social commentary, and freedom of play captivated millions, earning widespread acclaim and record-breaking sales. Often regarded as one of the greatest video games ever made, GTA San Andreas cemented Rockstar's reputation as a master of immersive, cinematic world building and set a new standard for the genre.
Eric, you a Grand Theft Auto fan?
I tried. I just
can never get into them.
Couldn't get into it.
I think Grand Theft Auto, for people that have been playing it for a long time, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is like one of the defining moments for that series. I know we've covered Grand Theft Auto 3 before, which was the series leap into 3D, but Grand Theft Auto San Andreas just took everything to such a new level over Grand Theft Auto 3. Like for me, that was the defining title where that series like genuinely came into its own and just, I guess, blossomed into what it is today.
Oh, I still remember to this day that it was that one that I did the Pedestrians Gone Crazy cheat and ruined my save file. And every time I tried playing it, I was like, what the frick is going on? Not realizing that it got saved to the game and just I had to restart. And I finally beat the jetpack level after that, though.
That's a funny story, actually.
I ruined my own game by cheating.
Right. I put in a cheat code and ruined my save file. Okay, good. Nice.
I mean,
nice.
Only
you know,
Rob.
Yep.
I learned my lesson. Sometimes you only do it when you want to have fun. And speaking of fun, on November 1st, 2007, Super Mario Galaxy was released from the Nintendo Wii in Japan, developed and published by Nintendo. Taking the beloved plumber beyond the Mushroom Kingdom, this landmark 3D platformer reimagined the series with dazzling, gravity-defying gameplay set among the stars. Players guided Mario across a collection of small spherical worlds, each with its own gravity, puzzles, and inventive mechanics, as he embarked on another quest to rescue Princess Peach from Bowser's Cosmic Fortress. Praised for its creative level design, responsive motion controls, and orchestral soundtrack, Super Mario Galaxy became a defining showcase of the Wii's potential. The game earned universal acclaim and multiple Game of the Year awards, cementing its place as one of the most imaginative and influential entries in Mario's storied history.
Didn't we just talk about Super Mario recently? Oh, we had an episode
Bros
on
3.
Super Mario. Yeah, Bros 3, and we talked about
Like last week, 2 weeks ago. Jeez.
what was last week?
Oh my goodness, Dave, come on.
I'm old.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
I don't remember.
Anyway, I'm mentioning it because we kind of talked about things that other games gave, and you guys brought up things.
Yeah, we had mentioned during that it was Rosalina and Luma that came from Mario Galaxy. And because you were like, oh, what else is sticking around for the games? Like, booyah, Galaxy had one. So booyah.
There you go.
If you want to learn what I'm talking about, go listen to that episode. Super Mario Bros. 3.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last up for this week in gaming history, on October 26, 2018, Red Dead Redemption 2 was released for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, developed and published by Rockstar Games. Acting as a prequel to Red Dead Redemption, the game tells the story of Arthur Morgan, a weary outlaw and member of the Vanderlyn gang as the Wild West gives way to the encroaching modern world of 1899. Featuring a breathtaking open world alive with detail, dynamic weather, realistic wildlife, and deeply human interactions, Red Dead Redemption 2 pushed the boundaries of immersion and storytelling in video games. Praised for its emotional depth, cinematic presentation, and staggering technical achievement, it became one of the fastest selling entertainment products in history and earned countless Game of the Year honors. Today, it stands as one of the most ambitious and masterfully crafted games ever made.
What day did it come out? October 26th?
Yes.
Just saying if I can plug it into a calendar somewhere. I'm working on the clock. That's all.
Okay.
I still have to fill in the schedule for like 2029. Remember?
Oh my goodness. Well, Dave, I don't think people want to hear about the future. They want to hear about the now, the past, what we've come
they
from.
want to hear about the now. They've come to the wrong place, haven't they?
Well, the now is talking about the past.
The now is talking about past. Yeah, okay. Video game journalism is, to be fair, about as old as video games themselves. Even in the beginning, in 1972, Rolling Stone magazine ran a feature by sports reporter Stuart Brand about a space war competition at Stanford. Space War, of course, being one of the earliest games. We've done an episode on it. Check it out. And that's a story that stands to this day. I mean, by timing, one of the first mainstream articles that treated anything related to video games as more than just a novelty tucked away in a paragraph somewhere. By the mid 70s, arcades had found dedicated coverage in what's called Play Meter magazine, which was a trade-only publication that basically chronicled the entire coin-operated entertainment industry, not just arcades, but also, your coin machines, your skee balls and your basketballs and pinballs, which didn't fall under arcades, and so on and so forth. And as arcades entered into their own golden age, hundreds of stories about this new pastime, about video games, began appearing in newspapers and magazines and to be fair, on television across the entire country. But the reality is that the very first consumer-oriented column dedicated specifically to video games, the kind that spoke directly to players rather than business owners, began in an unlikely place. We wouldn't have expected to come within the pages of, per se, Video Magazine. Video isn't a gaming publication in any way, shape, or form. It was founded in 1977 by Reese Communications to cover the booming world of consumer electronics. Eric, the kind where we used to sell televisions and VCRs and laser discs and hi-fi sound systems. We sold some of that, didn't we?
Oh yeah.
we sold a lot of that.
Projo TVs.
We've talked before on this podcast about how video games suffered from sort of an identity crisis as it was an emerging industry, right? Retailers and consumers didn't quite know what to make of them when they first started to appear in the 70s. Since they were connected to televisions, some thought of them as another kind of home video technology like a VCR. Since they were, on the other hand, literally games, others followed them mentally alongside board games. They considered them to be toys. No doubt that as this magazine advertised itself as the magazine for home video enthusiasts, that videos fell squarely into the home video technology category. So as video games began to become more prominent, Video Magazine featured them as quote-unquote TV games in their buying guides alongside their buying recommendations for video recorders and video projection systems. The magazine's very first issue, Volume 1, Issue 1, which was published in November of 1977, was titled the 1978 Videos Buyer Guide. The magazine always did one at the very end of every year that was the buying guide for the next year. And in the 1978 Videos Buyer Guide, which was their first publication, it featured guides on video games, video cameras, video software, video music, and video projection systems. Those were the various options in the buying guide. Video games in this first issue were front and center. They took up the first 30 pages of this buyer guide, helping readers figure out which is the right game for you. That was the question that was asked of their readers. And across these pages, the editors offered a brief history of video games, advice on choosing a console, and frankly, coverage of more than 20 different systems that were available at the time. We've talked about how Generation 1 of consoles there were literally hundreds of options in the beginning. In this buyer guide, they covered everything from the Telstar Alpha, which was 1995, to the Atari video computer system, the VCS. We know it now as the Atari 2600. At the time, it was retailing for $189.95. So really, really, really wide range of options in that first generation, right? One of the fun thing about the buying guide, the very first issue there, is as they're telling people about video game history and how it works, they have this anecdote about how consoles have to be submitted to the FCC and have to be approved by the FCC in order to be sold in stores. And the majority of consoles that do not get selected are rejected because of the radiation that they output. I guess it was a concern, like the signal, like the television signal, like it was shielding, and the FCC would reject them because of what it was outputting. And I was like,
okay.
never seen that anywhere else before, so that's interesting.
Not where my mind went when you said radiation.
That's what they called it, radiation.
No, it is. It absolutely is.
Yeah, you were thinking like uranium exposure.
Yeah, I'm like, what? That's definitely something to be concerned about.
Right. For much of the following year, through 1978, TV games were included as reviews in Video Magazine's Video Test Report segment, just alongside all their other home theater components. In their summer 1978 issue, Volume 1, Issue 2, Video Test Report number 1, for instance, was all about the Fairchild Channel F. That's a console that we covered previously in episode 114. If you don't know, the Channel F was the first console ever to have cartridges. That's where we got the concept of replaceable games from, because all the consoles before that only had built-in games. In Volume 3, fall of 1978, Video Test Report number 11 was on the Video Brain family computer. And the last issue of Volume 1, in Video Test Report number 18, the Atari Video Computer System was finally analyzed. So they were just covering consoles as basically home theater equipment, because that's what Video Magazine was basically selling, was home theater equipment. And up until this point, they were covering video games for the first year as they were just normal home theater equipment. Video Test 1 was on the Fairchild Channel F, but Video Test 2 was on the Sony Trinitron TV, and Video Test 3 was on JBL speakers, and number 4 was on a hi-fi video recorder, So that was where video games fit into this space. But by 1979, as games like Space Invaders were incredibly popular, and platforms like the VCS, like the Atari 2600, had been creeping into living rooms in insane numbers. The editor of Video Magazine, Bruce Apart, decided to take a chance on a new kind of feature. And that gamble became Arcade Alley, which is a recurring column written by 3 friends who shared a deep love for games and also had a background in like comics and fanzines as professional writers. They were Arnie Katz, Bill Kunkel, and Joyce Worley. And these 3 sought out not just to review games, they wanted to analyze them. So Arcade Alley was first seen in Volume 2, Issue 3 of Video Magazine, the summer of 1979 issue. And in the beginning, Arcade Alley was subtitled A Critical Look at Video Cartridge Games and Programs. That's a mouthful. A critical look at video cartridge games and programs. And in the first Arcade Alley, it returned to the publication to discuss the Atari video computer system. This was, as far as we know, the first time any mainstream publication dedicated a recurring column to video games. And for many, this is the foundation, the groundwork, the beginning of video game journalism as we know it today. In case you're curious, it started with the following words. Once only the super rich could hope to own a private electronic playground. Now arcade addicts everywhere could make this golden dream come true with video games marketed by Atari, Magnavox, Fairchild, Bally, and others. This column will attempt to treat these games from a fresh viewpoint, one that stresses playability rather than technology. Design superiority will be noted when it is present, since the complexity of the unit strongly affects game quality, but the emphasis will be on the game cartridges themselves. Before moving on, they noted, we decided to begin again with Atari for 2 main reasons. First, Atari helped start it all by introducing Pong to the arcades, and second, the unit has been available in its present form longer than most of its competitors. And that column went on, the first one, to look at a handful of titles. They looked at Video Olympics, Surround, Home Run, Breakout, and Air Sea Battle. They could certainly be critical if it was necessary. In that first article, they wrote of handball that, quote, the inactive player is unhappily indicated by a blinking paddle. We found this less satisfactory than just having the paddle disappear when it's not used, end quote.
Okay.
In later columns, they continued that honesty. Writing about the Bally Professional Arcade, they remarked, anticipation ran high when Bally announced the debut of its professional arcade. Gamers felt there was much reason to hope, since Bally has long reigned as the king of the amusement arcades. Although the system is state of the art in many respects, we found it something of a disappointment. And when covering the Magnavox Odyssey 2, they wrote, pioneering doesn't always turn out to be an advantage, as has certainly proven to be the case with Magnavox in the area of home arcades.
Damn.
Right? I mean, these guys weren't holding back. These were not puff pieces. They were genuine critiques written by people that were figuring out what made games fun, accessible, or frustrating, when the industry itself was also figuring out what made games fun, accessible, or frustrating. You know?
Yeah.
Arcade Alley quickly became one of video's most read features, and it revealed something that the publishing world hadn't really realized yet. And that was the fact that there was a growing audience of passionate hobbyists, of readers and gamers out there who wanted video games to be taken seriously. And so in 1981, the trio convinced Video's publisher, who was Jay Rosenfield, to let them turn their column into its own magazine. Now, the first issue of this magazine, Electronic Games Magazine, our topic today, was originally scheduled to be released the week of October 15th, 1981, but it was delayed to October 29th. And when it finally hit newsstand, it really marked a watershed moment. It really represents the birth of modern video game journalism in the way we know it today in the United States. And I say United States because had it published 2 weeks earlier as planned on the 15th, it would have been published during the same week as Computer and Video Games Magazine, which is the first British-based video game magazine. Either way you look at it, within the final 2 weeks of October, depending on who you talk to, the world saw their first publications dedicated to consumer video games. Right?
Sure.
So the first issue of Electronic Games Magazine, Eric, you had said when we talked previously, you remember that issue?
Oh, I don't remember the opening issue. I remember the magazine quite well.
What about the magazine?
It just had everything you ever wanted to know about video games before they were releasing. Stories, preloads, everything.
I have a really good question. There's a point to this, because when I was doing research on this episode, I was in a chat with friends, and when I mentioned Electronic Games Magazine, the friend said the exact same thing that you just said. All right. So that's, I guess, common for our age, that we all have fond memories of Electronic Games Magazine. That's great. The problem with that is that, do you want to know how long this magazine ran?
Oh, let's see here. I'm gonna guessing it probably lasted until 2015.
I think y'all are mixing up Electronic Games Magazine with Electronic Game Magazine. Like there's other. I'm not even joking. So it got me too when I learned this. So Electronic Games Magazine, what we're discussing today, the first run of it was here October 29th, 1981, and it folded in August of 1985. Someone revived it in October of 1992, and under 3 different names, it existed until January of 1997. So really, only 10 years. It was a like an active publication, and we all have really fond memories of it. Like,
I remember going to the grocery store and it'd be on the magazine rack.
I'm not saying no, because
No.
I felt the same way and they felt the same way, but realistically, like, our memories come from a very specific time period.
Dave, the timeline's broken.
The timeline is so very broken.
It's broken.
The first cover, the first issue of Electronic Games Magazine, which you could very easily find online, just Google Electronic Games issue 1. It's in the Internet Archive. Features a boy on a cover. Bill Kunkel once shared that the original design, drawn months before the publication, featured a kid being quote unquote zapped by a flying saucer from his television, which was meant to be a literal visualization of a game like bursting into real life. But unfortunately, the expression on the boy's face looked a little too real. Like he had that a look, as Bill Kunkel put it, "I'm getting zapped" look, all right, but it wasn't the good kind of zapping. And so the artwork had to be redone before release, and that lost cover kind of got buried. It did eventually resurface like 20 years later, but the kid looked like was having a little bit too much fun playing video games. That first draft, though, that the zapped one, did serve a very critical purpose. In the summer of 1981, before a single issue of this magazine ever existed, Kunkel attended the Consumer Electronics Show in Chicago, carrying only those prototype cover slicks, right? A promise of a magazine and a pitch that video games deserve a publication of their own. And so he used these mock-ups to make the rounds to every major video game company, showing them the potential of what Electronic Games Magazine could be. Activision's Jim Levy had already gotten it, Kunkel later recalled, and their PR person, Diane Droznis, treated me like visiting royalty. Magnavox genuinely liked us, which meant Atari had to play, and after that, everyone wanted in, he said. Now, to help solidify their credibility, Kunkel even offered Midway the magazine's back cover ad slot for free. That was a gesture that turned the arcade giant into a loyal advertiser for much of the magazine's run. And that trip to CES was pivotal. It was the key. When Kunkel returned from CES with industry support in hand, that's when the publisher Jay Rosenfeld had agreed to move forward with production. As Arnie Katz put it in a later interview, this first issue with the zapped kid on the cover was a quote unquote one-shot experiment. But after that, Reese Communications, quickly committed to a bi-monthly publication, and within a few issues, Electronic Games was actually running monthly. This debut issue of the magazine didn't just introduce a new magazine, it really validated a whole hobby. Beneath its quote unquote video warrior columns were reviews and commentary and features that really established the template for every gaming magazine that followed. Its opening editorial, Switch On, greeted readers as members of the world's fastest growing hobby group and promised that Electronic Games would be written by actual gamers for actual gamers. Inside were features such as, can asteroids conquer space invaders? We know the answer to that is no. It's so weird looking back now, isn't it? Like, this whole magazine, as a side note, is really cool. Like, if you go back and you actually look at it, like, it's really cool to look at the old stuff, because like the articles, it's all the articles, right? Articles about Atari, and there are mechanical bridge players, and then you have all these mechanical games that are advertising, like, handheld football. And it has a Pocket Guide for Gamers article that's got like Pocket Simon and Merlin and little Casio game playing watch, all this like fun stuff that I still want to this day. I want a Casio game playing. I guess that's an Apple Watch, isn't it? A game playing watch, technically.
Yeah.
There's a Space Invaders jacket in this guide. It's really cool to go back and look at all this old. Some of it I don't recognize. The best part about going through some of these old magazines is there are games that just have in all honesty been lost to time, that you just get an advertisement of in the middle of nowhere. Articles like, can asteroids conquer space invaders? There was a player's guide to programmable video games that covered Atari, Activision, Zircon, and Magnavox. And then there were columns that kind of, treated design and play mechanics as seriously as a film or sports criticism magazine. At a time when most outlets barely offered a single paragraph about video games, Electronic Games arrived to newsstands with 85 pages devoted entirely to the new pastime. And from its debut, Electronic Games stood out for that reason. It didn't read like a toy catalog or marketing pamphlet, it read like a journalistic magazine. The writing was conversational, yet authoritative. It treated games with the same respect that was given to music by Rolling Stones or film or sports magazines were given to sports. Katz, Kunkel, and Worley established a clear editorial philosophy. They would celebrate creativity, critique design, and cover every facet of gaming from handhelds to arcades with fairness and enthusiasm. And that tone really made Electronic Games approachable to a wide audience. Adults could appreciate its insight, while younger readers felt invited to learn about something serious and new. As Katz would later explain in an interview, the team aimed high, writing for adults, but in a way, quote unquote, a smart 12-year-old could follow. They kept the language clean and the humor sharp, ensuring the magazine could sit on a family coffee table without a second thought. Fun side note related to that. Do either of you know what a cooch dancer is?
No.
No.
This is true story. True story. In this first article, first issue, sorry, can't even say the words right. In this first issue, in the reader's replay, which is where readers can write in and the editor will respond. This is, of course, the first episode, so that hasn't happened. So they got letters written from different people, and this one's titled "Explosive Field." It says, "Best wishes and success on your new venture. In the last 18 months, the video game business has literally exploded, and the time is right for a magazine devoted to video and other electronic games. We at Activision would like to offer our support and encouragement to all of you at Electronic Games. James H. Levy, President, Activision, Santa Clara, California." The editor's response is as follows. "Like the cooch dancer at the carnival said to the crowd as it entered, you ain't seen nothing yet. We at EG believe that the next 18 months will be even more explosive than the last year and a half." Like the cooch dancer at the carnival said to the crowd. I didn't know what a cooch dancer was.
The suspense is killing me, Dave.
I had
What
to
is
look
it?
I had to look it up. It's a belly dancer at a carnival. The term hoochie coochie came from cooch dancer. In case you wanted to know that.
I did.
I'm at a loss.
Don't ever say that I don't teach you things or we never learn anything from video games, because thanks to this magazine and the research I had to do on the beginning of Electronic Games legacy and video game journalism, we all learned what a cooch dancer is.
It almost sounds like you're going to get a call from HR now, though.
I'm telling you. I kept asking people, including coworkers, I was like, hey, especially like some of the older ones, I was like, I'm not trying to be obscene, but do you know what a cooch dancer is? And almost everyone was like, a stripper? I'm like, no, not a stripper. Definitely the first thought for most of us, though. Although one of them did argue that a belly dancer in a carnival, and when the time period that was probably used, was probably the equivalent of a stripper to a lot of people. So,
God dang.
but there you go. Cooch dancer at a carnival. You ain't seen nothing yet. What a weird. I've never heard anyone say that in my entire life until I read Electronic Games #1. Like the cooch dancer at the carnival said to the crowd. Boy, oh boy. Moving on. One of the magazine's earliest contributions to gaming culture was called the Arkie Awards, that was introduced during its first year of publication. These were named after the Arcade Awards and their Arcade Alley roots. The Arkies were the very first organized awards for video games. They were honoring achievements across, categories like audiovisual design, best graphics, innovation, gameplay style, game of the year, best arcade, that kind of stuff. This helped the audience reinforced the idea that games weren't just gadgets. They were creative works that could be recognized and celebrated like any other art form. Um, to be fair, this magazine also helped popularize one of gaming's most enduring traditions, the Easter egg. We've done a whole episode on the origin of the Easter egg. That would be where the Easter egg came from to begin with, which is the Atari Game Adventure from 1980. Through their reviews and letters column, Electronic Games was among the first publication to document hidden secrets left by developers, which kind of turned them into a sort of cultural treasure hunt, you know? And they did kind of talk about did they talk about it in this one? Yeah, they did talk about it in this one. There's a section called Electronic Games Hotline, and it says Atari confirms rumor, secret messages exist. Sources at Atari have confirmed one of arcading's most persistent wild stories. If a gamer sends the hero to a certain room in the VCS adventure and performs a specific action, a secret message revealing the designer's name will appear on the screen. So they talked about it in their very first episode.
That's neat.
Kunkel has often credited Atari Steve Wright for coining the term, but admits that he and Katz may have been the first ever to print it in a consumer magazine. True to their philosophy about Easter eggs, they refuse to spoil the secrets outright, believing, as Kunkel once said in an interview, that finding them was most of the fun. In just a few short years, Electronic Games became the defining voice of a booming industry. It was chronicling at the time the golden age of arcades, the rise of home consoles, and the dawn of the personal computer as a gaming platform. I mean, let's face it, the late 70s, early 80s, where this is, that was a booming time for gaming. For its readers, each issue of the magazine felt like opening a new window into a fast growing world. For the writers, on the other hand, it was proof that their belief in video games as a legitimate medium had been right all along. And for a few shining years, it gave players and developers alike a shared language, one that is built on respect, curiosity, and play. But as the industry that it covered began to expand faster than anyone could have imagined, the cracks that would soon shake all of gaming were already forming beneath the surface. You know, Rob, what I love about Electronic Games Magazine is how it gave players a voice. It turned hobbyists into a community, people who just wanted to share their passion for games. Funny enough, that's kind of what podcasting lets us do today.
Wait, you're saying starting a podcast is as easy as typing up your own issue of Electronic Games?
I'd argue that it's even easier. That's why I use Zencaster. It's the all-in-one podcasting platform that makes recording simple. Just log in from your browser, hit record, and you're instantly capturing studio quality audio and up to 4K video. There are no complicated setups and no extra gear needed.
But what if something goes wrong? Magazines had editors. I only got you.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that fact. Anyway, that's where Zencaster's multi-layered backups come in. Even if your connection drops, your recordings are safe and sound. There are no lost pages and no corrupted files.
And editing? Please tell me I don't have to cut and paste tape like the old days.
Not at all. Zencaster's post-production tools do all the heavy lifting, removing background noise, cutting filler words, and balancing your audio so you sound professional every time.
Okay, but once my show's ready, how do I get it out there? Mailing subscriptions seems a little outdated.
Well, that's the absolute best part. Zencaster makes distributing your podcast to all the major platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts as easy as clicking a button labeled publish. From recording to release, everything happens all in one place.
So it's podcasting without the print deadlines. Okay, I like it. How can our listeners start their own show?
Go to zencaster.com/pricing. That's ZENCASTR. And use our offer code, all one word, memory card lane, to get 30% off the first month of any Zencaster paid plan.
So if you've been thinking about starting a podcast, grab that discount and make your own voice heard. Just like those writers did back in the day.
That's absolutely right. Head over to Zencaster, ZENCASTR.com /pricing, use our offer code MemoryCardLane and you'll get 30% off your first month.
Now, let's get back to electronics games.
When electronic games launched in 1981, the video game industry seemed unstoppable. Arcades were booming, consoles were flying off shelves, and home computers promised a new frontier for play. For a brief moment in time, everything felt limitless: the technology, the creativity, and most definitely the profits. But by late 1983, as we know, that optimism began to unravel. The market became oversaturated with consoles, developers rushed half finished games to meet holiday deadlines, and retailers were drowning in unsold cartridges. Even the arcade scene, that was once the heart of the industry, was stumbling under the weight of expensive Laserdisc machines and the fading novelty of the industry as a whole. As Bill Kunkel later reflected, we tend to simplify it these days, but the crash wasn't just about bad games. It was about a young industry expanding faster than it could sustain itself. Caught in the middle of all that were publications like Electronic Games. As the crash deepened, Electronic Games tried to adapt. Arnie Katz pushed for broader coverage of computer software, sensing that personal computing was going to become gaming's next frontier. But the publisher, Jay Rosenfeld, who had built his success on consumer electronics, wasn't yet convinced that readers wanted to trade joysticks for keyboards. And so he resisted the shift. And by mid 1984, when console sales had cratered, that hesitation proved costly for the magazine. Advertising by then had dried up. Companies that once fought for ad space were now folding outright, and the entire ecosystem that had supported the magazine to begin with was now vanishing. By the time Electronic Games reached its fourth year, Rosenfeld decided to replace the founding team with a whole new editorial staff. Without Katz, Kunkel, and Worley at its helm, the magazine lost the voice that it had been so well known for. Readers noticed pretty quickly, and when the backlog of articles by Katz, Kunkel, and Worley finally ran out, circulation in the publication fell sharply. And to be fair, so did industry trust. By 1985, Electronic Games quietly printed its final issue. But for its founders, the story doesn't end there. Katz, Kunkel, and Worley regrouped. They founded Katz, Kunkel, and Worley Incorporated, a creative consultancy built to bridge their editorial expertise and their deep understanding of design. Soon after, they launched Subway Software, one of the earliest companies in the industry that was dedicated purely to video game design. That was very rare in this area when programmers were kind of expected to handle everything themselves. Their debut title, Borrowed Time, was developed by Interplay and blended text adventure storytelling with noir-inspired visuals. They followed it with the Omicron Conspiracy for Epics, WWF Wrestling for Micro League Sports Association. That was one of the first wrestling games to use official WWF licensing. And they also worked on Superman Man of Steel for Capstone. Kunkel later called the Amiga and Atari ST versions of Man of Steel the best work he ever did. They were having a good time at this point in time. Through Subway Software, the trio brought a journalistic mindset to development. There was clear design documentation, player-focused mechanics, and an understanding that good games needed personality as much as they needed polish. The trio's fingerprints were everywhere, even on projects where they served quietly as consultants. They were either editing dialogue or fine-tuning gameplay. At the same time, Kunkel's growing expertise in game analysis led him into the courtroom. He served as an expert witness in several landmark legal cases that helped define intellectual property in gaming. We've covered them. We did an episode, I believe it's our breakout episode, because that's where a lot of this is, where we talked about the court cases that the industry was based on. Go check it out if you want to learn. Some of these cases, like Casey Munchkin versus Pac-Man, Data East versus Capcom, and Galoob versus Nintendo, these were all cases that he was an expert witness in as well. In each case, Kunkel argued for creative freedom and player rights, famously maintaining that no company should ever be allowed to own an entire genre. By the late 1980s, the crash was over, but the medium had changed forever, and so, frankly, had the people who chronicled it. Now, what began as a magazine column had turned into a philosophy. Games could be art, games could be culture, and games deserved thoughtful criticism just like any other form of entertainment. As we know, by the early 90s, video games had their rebound, right? The Nintendo Entertainment System had rebuilt the console market. The Sega Genesis brought arcade quality play into the homes. And other magazines like Electronic Gaming Monthly, which is the one we might all remember, and GamePro were thriving on newsstands. And so it was in this environment that electronic games had a brief return. It was a resurrection spearheaded by EGM's publisher, Steve Harris. Katz, Kunkel, and Worley were brought back in, reunited even, to revive the brand that had defined their careers. This new electronic games carried the same spirit as the original: honest criticism, clear writing, and a belief that games were worth taking seriously. But by then, the industry had changed. Whereas the 1981 magazine had been a pioneering voice in a new medium, the 1992 revival kind of entered a crowded, very competitive marketplace that was dominated by flashier layouts, publisher tie-ins, and very system-specific coverage. Despite this, the trio brought professionalism and to the table and a perspective that set them apart. They added historical retrospectives. They spotlighted influential designers, and they wrote thoughtful features about how technology was shaping gameplay. And so the magazine slowly began to find a loyal readership, but as that happened, creative control of the magazine was kind of slipping away from the trio. At one point, Harris decided to rebrand the magazine as Fusion, broadening its focus to pop culture, but the founders did not like that. The revival of electronic games launched in late 1992. For a lot of people, this felt like seeing an old friend return. You know, they were bringing up articles talking about Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and Super Mario World. Again, a lot of the other magazines out there were tied to a specific system, like Nintendo Power Magazine, but Electronic Games was sitting here kind of treating gaming as a whole. And this early 90s one really performed respectively on newsstands, and it built a steady readership, but it really faced fierce competition from everything else. And so that idea of Fusion, that sleeker design, came out with the tagline, "The interactive edge of entertainment." And Fusion wasn't a bad magazine. It just wasn't electronic games. You know, it didn't take long for its readers to notice a difference, and a lot of people dropped the magazine. Eventually, Steve Harris left the publisher, and so Fusion was sold and once again restructured. That title was merged conceptually with another title called Intelligent Gamer. So for a time, the magazine was known as Intelligent Gamers Fusion, and after a few months, they shortened it again to Intelligent Gamer. So, yeah, I know. And, you know, Intelligent Gamer eventually ended up with Imagine Media. That's the same publisher that was publishing Next Generation magazine and PC Gamer magazine. They were forward thinking magazines, combining traditional reviews with like early web driven reporting. But just the point of all this, and me stumbling a little bit there, where I was trying to get to, is the timing just sucked. The internet in the late 90s was changing everything about how players consume news. People were increasingly turning to the internet instead of magazines for their information. And so Intelligent Gamer ended up printing its final issue in January of 1997. And when that happened, it kind of quietly closed the book on a publication lineage that had begun nearly 2 decades earlier with Arcade Alley. The end of electronic games symbolized more than the loss of a magazine, to be fair. It marked the close of print journalism's formative era, just before the internet democratized coverage entirely, right? But the truth is that the magazine's DNA is everywhere. It exists in Next Generation's ethical review policies. It existed in GamePro's playful editorial voices. And it still exists today in the reverence for history that we still see in Retro Gamer magazine. As Kunkel joked near the end of his career, Electronic Games died 3 times and somehow still lived on in every other magazine. And he wasn't wrong. He also lived on in every other magazine. Back in the early days of Electronic Games, Kunkel had written an anonymous reader response column using a tongue-in-cheek pseudonym called the Game Doctor. Now, that column had become a staple of the magazine. It was witty, irreverent, and surprisingly heartfelt. It offered advice, inside info, and an occasional tongue lashing to publishers who underestimated players. It gave readers a direct connection to the editors, and it really helped humanize the magazine's voice. After the print era ended, the Game Doctor lived on. Kunkel revived the persona in video games and computer entertainment, in computer gaming world, in Electronic Gaming Monthly, and later on in early gaming sites like Happy Puppy and the Digital Press. The Game Doctor was one of the first reoccurring voice columns in game journalism. It was a bridge between the print editorial and the conversational style that still defines gaming websites to this day. Now, by the 2000s, Kunkel had become both historian and teacher. He taught game design at the University of Nevada, consulted for developers, and in 2005, he finally published Confessions of the Game Doctor. It's a sharp, funny memoir chronicling the early chaos of game journalism. Through it all, he mentored young writers, reminding them that criticism was an act of curiosity, not cynicism. As he once said, a journalist has got to entertain the reader, and if you can make them laugh while they learn, you've already won. Katz moved into consulting and community building, while Joyce Worley became an advocate for accessible, player-centered coverage. Together, their legacy transcends any single publication. By the time of Kunkel's passing in, unfortunately, 2011, the trio's influence was everywhere in the ethics, the language, and the storytelling traditions of the medium that they helped legitimize. Electronic Games didn't just report on video games, it really defined how the world would talk about them. For readers in 1981, it validated their passion. For the writers and critics who followed, it literally laid the foundation for an entire field. And for everyone else who has ever reviewed a game, debated a score, celebrated an Easter egg, any of those things, the fingerprints of Katz, Kunkel, and Worley remain printed on every page of gaming journalism, gaming discussion that follows. There you have it, Electronic Games Magazine. And now you guys know where video game journalism started. Fun, huh? 1981.
1981, and they thought it wouldn't last.
It was a good run. I mean, again, the magazine didn't last as long as we think. I think most of us have fonder memories of EGM, of Electronic Gaming Monthly. I don't think Electronic Games.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think Electronic Games Magazine we know as well, but that's okay. It was around, it lasted, and it laid the groundwork for everything, because we certainly know the rest, right? Nintendo Power, GamePro. What was the one that GameStop bought and then sold?
Informer.
Game Informer. Thank you. Game Informer. We read
Xbox
all of those.
Had one.
Yep. All of them. PlayStation Magazine. This one laid the groundwork for all of that. We owe them a debt of gratitude, and hopefully through this episode, their story gets told, their legacy lives on. If you'd like to explore more stories like this one, or learn about many of the games that Electronic Games Magazine has covered over the years, we have a whole archive of episodes, 270 episodes, available for you to listen by going to our website at www.memorycardlane.com. Rob, what else can people find on our website?
You can find a calendar of our future episodes, know what we're going to be talking about in the few coming weeks or months or years, as Dave mentioned earlier. You can find a link to our Patreon where you can help support us and get access to ad-free and unedited versions of our episodes. You can find a link to our Discord where you can come chat with Dave and I about either episode topics or other gaming-related topics, or whoever knows. People won't know until you find out. You can also find links to our social media, where I am on several platforms as Rob_O_Raptor and Dave.
I can be found on various platforms as David is wrong. Eric, you got anything to plug?
I got nothing to plug except your show.
That's a good answer. That's a good friend there. That's a great friend there. Each week
Listen
we'll
to
tell
it
you.
on the way to work.
That's it. That's the way to do it. Each week we'll tell you one story relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game, a person, a technology, a console. We've even covered a few places as well. We'll tell you each story. We hope to teach you something new about the topic, what it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. When we sit down to research new topics each week, we get excited when we find out new things to share with you. It's this fantastic cycle of learning and teaching, teaching and learning, and in celebration of said cycle, we like to talk about our takeaways each week. So, Eric, as our guest today, what did you learn today?
God, I mean, it was just small little articles to begin with, and it grew into a multi-million-dollar business and collapsed because of the internet.
Yeah. I mean, but to be fair, it followed the trend of a lot of print, didn't it? Although to
Yeah,
be fair, we still have books. Like books are still a thing. And we still have magazine racks. They're just not our primary source of information anymore for a lot of mediums, including this one. I still enjoy magazines. Retro Game Magazine is fantastic. It literally does what we do in magazine form. It tells really great stories about classic video games. If you've never seen one, you all should go check it out. They're great. Rob,
Yeah, Dave?
what'd you learn today?
Well, I'll give you 3 guesses what my favorite factoid of today's episode is.
Does it involve a belly dancer at a carnival?
You got that right, Dave.
I mean, I mean,
I
I
thought part of
mean,
me was going to say he's going to hit on that Triniton TV, man.
man, Triniton was it was
It
the
made my back
thing.
hurt.
Yeah, they were so heavy. They were so
Fair.
big and so heavy. My God, when we started, and you were a couple years before me, but we were at Best Buy in the early 2000s. 10 years for me,
12.
12 for you, 10 for me. That's where we met. We projection TVs were that was the TV technology that was when we started. They were projection TVs, and LCDs were just around the corner. But these projection TVs were gigantic. I mean, we had one. We bought one. We each owned one. Oh, they were so big. Now the big CRTs were the worst. At least projections were at least a little bit lighter than the big CRTs.
Which is why our backs hurt now.
Yeah, yeah, that's why. That's why. Let's see. What did I learn today?
Yeah,
What did
what
I
about
learn
yourself, Dave? What's your big takeaway?
I mean, I really enjoyed the anecdote about the cooch dancer, but since you took that, I mean, I know I can take it too, but I didn't know this story. I hadn't thought about where video game journalism came from. I love diving into all the old stuff, getting my hands actually on the documents, the design articles, the bibles for video games, the everything. So getting to look at this first issue, more specifically getting to see the Arcade Alley column, which is in Video Magazine. You can also find that on the Internet Archives. That was really fascinating to me. I really enjoy getting to see the perspective of video games from people in that time period. I know we talk about it, but I think sometimes we lose that through our rose tinted glasses of looking at things retrospectively. So I always enjoy a chance to dive into original material. So getting to spend a couple days in the midst of the Arcade Alley column and then a few of the early issues of this magazine was a lot of fun. I'm gonna go with the FCC denying consoles due to radiation. I thought that was I've never read that before, so that was fun.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one too.
Yeah, that was pretty good. All right, well, before we take it out of here and look into next week, Let's see. Eric, is there anything that you'd like to add to today's episode?
I really do miss gaming magazines.
Yeah, I know. Me too. Yeah, me too.
I mean,
I
you
know.
have your phone, but it's not as fun as the magazines.
No, and it's the same kind of notion that people who read books, because I'm still an avid reader, feel about books. Like there's something special about holding it in your hand, the smell of a book. In terms of magazines, the layouts, right? Like there was an art to the way they laid articles out and strategy guides in the magazines out, and that's just kind of lost nowadays. Back in these days when we had strategy guides for games, they were literally maps that were printed. Like they would take screenshots from the game and print them so an entire page of a magazine looked like the map. And nowadays people just record on their phone and post on YouTube. You know what I mean?
There used to be some great, beautiful strategy guides, how they built them like actual wonderful books.
I know. It's you're right. There's something lost, I feel, but at the same time, I do appreciate how easy it is to get information nowadays.
Yeah, you're not stuck for 20 years.
Yep, so give or take some. Rob, is there anything you'd like to add to today's episode?
Well, I will say thank you everyone for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the journey and taking it with us and learning all of these fun things and fun facts. And also, thank you, Eric, for joining us tonight. It's always a pleasure to have you, and we hope to continue seeing you in future episodes.
You are my favorite brothers.
Yay. That that brings us to the end of our journey through the pages of electronic games. At its heart, this was never just a magazine about high scores or joystick reviews. It was really a declaration that video games mattered. Before the world took them seriously, before universities studied them or critics dissected them, Katz, Kunkel, and Worley treated them like art worth analyzing and preserving. What began as a small column in the back of Video Magazine became a cultural spark, one that gave a young medium its first language. They coined the terms we still use today, from playfield to Easter egg, and in doing so, they gave players a way to talk about what made games magical. Each issue of Electronic Games was a bridge between creators and audiences, written by fans who believed that fun itself was something worthy of study. When the crash came and the presses went silent, the conversation they started didn't end, it evolved. Their ideas echoed into computer gaming world, Nintendo Power, EGM, and the countless other digital outlets that have followed. Every time a reviewer praises a game's design or a fan defends one's artistic merit, they're carrying forward the legacy of those first pioneers who dared to say that video games were worth writing about. In the end, Electronic Games wasn't just the beginning of video game journalism, it was the moment the hobby found its voice. A voice that told millions of players for the first time that what they loved was something real, something to be proud of, and something worth sharing. And though the ink has long faded from those pages, the conversation it began still continues, one review, one article, and one memory at a time. Next week, we're setting aside the gaming journalism of Electronic Games magazine to dive into the gritty battlefields of Gears of War. Released in 2006, this genre defining third person shooter revolutionized action games with its intense cover based combat, cinematic storytelling, and jaw dropping visuals powered by the Unreal Engine 3. From its gripping narrative to its iconic Lancer chainsaw, Gears of War became a cultural phenomenon that reshaped the industry. Join us as we explore Gears' history, its innovation, and its legacy on next week's action packed trip down memory card lane. Do the thing.
Skibidi dum 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 doo.